Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. We have about 2 minutes before start time and then we'll get started. So thank you for waiting. Hi everyone, it is now 1 p.m. Eastern, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the webinar today. So on behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, welcome to our webinar today on building resilience in an uncertain future for small wastewater systems. My name is Avery Davis from the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. And before we begin, we're going to cover a few housekeeping items and then we'll get started. During the webinar today, everyone will be kept on mute to ensure audio quality. If you have a question, please type it into the GoToWebinar question dialog box anytime throughout the session. We will be saving your questions for a facilitated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. After the webinar, you will receive a follow-up email that includes a link to the recording and other information you may need. You can also download the slides from today in the Handouts tab in your GoToWebinar control panel. This webinar has not been submitted for pre-approval of continuing education credits, but eligible attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for their personal record. To receive a certificate for this session, you must attend for the entire webinar, register and attend individually using your real name and unique email address. Certificates will be sent via email within 30 days of the webinar date. And if you have any questions or need assistance, please contact us at smallsystems@syr.edu. Now for a little bit about the Environmental Finance Center Network. We provide training and technical assistance to small water and wastewater systems in all U.S. states and territories through our building technical, managerial, and financial capacity programs. If your community or utility needs assistance with drinking water or wastewater system management, please feel free to contact us through our request form, which I will be sharing shortly in the chat. And on that note, I would like to introduce our presenter for today. So we have Caitlin Leo, who is a research engineer in the Office of Water Programs at California State University, Sacramento.
Thank you, Avery. So she said I am a research engineer at the Environmental Finance Center for Region 9 at the Office of Water Programs. And today I'm going to be talking about building climate resilience for small wastewater systems. But before we begin, I just want to talk a little bit more about the Environmental Finance Center network. So as Avery was saying, we're a university-based center across the US that helps build capacity for small wastewater and water systems. And if you look below, you can see kind of a list of all the services we provide. So anything from adaptation and resiliency planning, like we're discussing today, to operator training and certification. And then, as Avery said, you'll be provided with a link to apply if you're interested. A little bit more about our EFC. So we are the Environmental Finance Center for EPA Region 9. We are housed in the Office of Water Programs that operates out of Sacramento State. And we've been providing training for water and wastewater managers and operators for the last 50 years. And then we've also started a research and tech and managerial support departments. We've been providing that for the past 20 years. Yeah, and if you'd like to get in contact with us, there's a link to our website and our EFC below, and just some more contact information. Contact for the Associate Director, Maureen Kerner, if you'd like to reach out for some technical assistance. Yes, I'll move into our topic for the day. So first off, what does it mean for a wastewater system to be climate resilient? And it really just means that as the climate changes and you start to face some challenges, that you're still able to produce an effluent that protects public and environmental health, that's going to meet your effluent regulations, and that you also kind of have a plan moving forward for your facility upgrades and your workforce development, and how you're going to continually meet the changing treatment needs. So some challenges that are facing all wastewater systems across the country are climate change, aging infrastructure, stricter effluent standards, and lack of funding. And all of these are kind of made more significant or exacerbated by some of the added challenges of being a small system, such as limited financial capacity, lack of resources for staff to acquire and apply for funding, limited staff capacity, and then staff acquisition and retention. So I believe we have 3 poll questions that we're actually going to go ahead and ask on this slide before we move forward. So the first poll question, oh, I'm sorry, I actually can't see them. I did not think that one through. I'm sorry, Avery, I think you're going to need to read them.
Yeah, no
I forgot I
problem.
wasn't going to be able to see them. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So the first question is, which of the following presents the most significant challenge? And the options are staff retention, staff training, staff retention, funding, financing, or overall revenue, securing funding, or meeting water quality regulations. I'm going to leave it up for a few more seconds, so make sure to get your answers in, or if the poll's not working for you, you can submit your answer in the chat. So I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1. So it looks like 9% answered staff training, 20% staff retention. The winner is funding, financing, or overall revenue at 47%.
Okay,
and then,
awesome.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you. That's all really helpful information for us as well. Yeah, I think funding always is a really big challenge. All right, and I think there should be 2 more.
So for the next poll, we have what is the likelihood of your system requiring significant infrastructure improvements in the next 5 years? And the options are none, low, moderate, or high. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So 11% answered none, 9% answered low, 52% moderate, and 27% high.
Okay, yeah, and then the last one's just the same question, but 10 years, just trying to get a gauge of the urgency. Thank you. Oh, sorry, are we going to do the third poll question?
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sorry,
it's
I'm
launched.
being
Yes, sorry.
confusing.
Yeah. No worries. No. What is the likelihood of your system requiring significant infrastructure improvements in the next 10 years? The same answers. We have none, low, moderate, and high. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So 0% none, 5% low, 38% moderate, and 57% high.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you. That's super helpful for us. All right, yeah, so moving forward, we're going to talk about some of the specific climate change specific impacts on wastewater systems. So some of the impacts of climate change we're expecting to experience are more severe storms, more frequent storms, reduced flows due to drought and some water conservation measures, warmer temperatures, groundwater and sea level rise. And obviously this is all dependent on where you're located. Some places will experience some of these and not others. And then some might be experiencing almost all of them. But we're going to go through and take a look at how each of these specifically impacts some of the main components of wastewater systems, so collection systems, pumping stations, and treatment facilities. So some of the impacts on collection systems, if you're going to have more frequent and severe storms, you're probably going to see an increase in sewer system overflows, mainly due to infiltration and inflow, especially if you have an older system, which many small wastewater systems do. And then you're also going to likely have an increase in breakages and blockages. On the flip side of that, if you are a system that's experienced reduced flows due to drought, you're going to have the water's going to be sitting in this collection system longer. So you're going to have a lot of like increased erosion and odor due to increased H2S productions due to the longer retention times. You can also experience increased blockages due to the low flow and deposition. And then another common issue associated with drought is root intrusion. So as there's less water, the trees have to get water from somewhere, and they're looking, and a lot of times they can intrude into the pipes and cause significant damage and overflows. So sorry, excuse me. I also realized I just missed a poll question at the last slide, but I'll do that after this. um, so if you're in a location that's going to experience rise of sea level or groundwater, you can have significant infrastructure damage from either floating pipes that crack or corrosion, erosion, inundation, and then also an increase in temperature leads to kind of more biological and chemical activity in your collection system, and increased H2S production, which similar to the reduced flows is going to lead to an increase in odor and corrosion. Avery, I think I'll go back to the third poll question after I go through all of the impacts. So I apologize, but I'll let you know is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. And then impacts on pumping stations, very similar to collection systems. So increased overflows due to more fluctuation in volumes, and then corrosion and odor associated with drought, and then infrastructure damage associated with rise of sea level and groundwater table. And also you're going to see a reduction in service area from flooding. And then kind of a weird one that has been found in studies, but some behavior changes associated with higher temperatures are an increased use of flushable wipes that can cause a lot of problems at pumping station and wastewater treatment headworks. So what are the implications of this? So one, you're going to have to spend a lot more on operation and maintenance. There's going to be more frequent flushing and cleaning, and then inspections. You're going to have to respond to more sewer system overflows, odor complaints. You're also, if you're located in an area that's going to have a lot of infiltration and inflow from more severe storms, you're likely going to spend more on pumping energy. And then if you're in an area where you're going to have more odor and corrosion issues, either just with temperature or drought, you're likely going to have to do some chemical addition and spend more on that to combat those. And then again, infrastructure repairs and replacements. This is just stressing an already, in a lot of places, already aging infrastructure, but pipe replacement, manholes, and pump stations, those two can be very expensive and tend to be where you see the most corrosion earlier on. And how can you, what can you do about this? Can you address these? The main strategies are just being able to fund infrastructure improvement, build your staff capacity, and develop efficient O&M plan. And we'll go more in depth on this later in the presentation. All right, and then moving forward to the impacts on wastewater treatment plants. So similar to collection systems, if you have a increased storm severity and frequency, you're going to have high fluctuations in volume. You might need to bypass your headworks more frequently. You'll just have additional stress on your design capacity. The fluctuation in volume can cause a lot of process changes, such as retention times that can just alter the way you have to operate your process. You can experience washout of biomass and biological treatment systems. And then kind of on the flip side of that with drought, if you're receiving less volume, it's going to be what we call a higher strength. So it's going to have higher concentrations of the constituents you're treating, which can upset your biological processes and ultimately make it a lot more difficult to treat to your effluent quality standards, specifically if you have nutrient level regulations you have to meet. It can be a lot more difficult when you're receiving a higher strength effluent. So if you have sea level or groundwater table rise, again, infrastructure damage is a real risk with that. And then also increases in difficulty of managing sludge and dewatering. And then you also might have to pump your outfalls higher, which can lead to an increase in energy costs. And then increased temperature alters the performance of biological processes, sometimes for the better, but it's still a process adjustment you have to account for. And then you can have a lot more odor production as it gets warmer. So again, what are the implications of this? It's going to stress an already aging infrastructure. You might need additional infrastructure if you're going to start receiving much larger volumes and high fluctuations. You might have to have some overflow storage or like a way to bypass if you don't already have one, and then periodic or permanent process adjustments. So as things fluctuate either by volume or effluent or influent becomes more and more concentrated, you're really going to have to look especially at your biological processes and be able to operate them in a flexible way or just permanently adjust them, which takes staff capacity and expertise, and then an increase in pumping energy costs as you're dealing with larger volumes from stormwater intrusion. And again, it's how we address these, being able to fund whatever improvements you need, upgrade your facility, and kind of maybe explore some new treatment technologies that can help you have a more flexible process and meet like more stringent effluent regulations, operator training to have people who have the knowledge to be able to operate in this manner, and then just developing a really robust O&M plan. So I'm actually going to go back to our fourth poll question now to kind of get a gauge of what which of these impacts you guys are already experiencing.
Okay, so for our fourth poll question, it asks, have any of the following effects of climate change significantly impacted your operation? Select all that apply. So the options are more severe storms, more frequent storms, reduced flows, warmer temperatures, or sea level or water table rise. Okay, I'm going to close the poll in a couple seconds. So it is closing in 3, 2, 1. So it looks like the highest two are more severe storms at 50% and warmer temperatures at 48%.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys. All right, so all of the actions we just discussed can be incorporated into a climate resiliency plan. And we're going to move forward. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that and give you guys some resources to get started. So developing a climate resiliency plan. So what impacts can your facility expect? Obviously, it's going to be very dependent on your location, and then the severity of risk associated with some of these impacts is going to depend on the age of your system, your financial capacity, your staff capacity. And another thing to consider is like, how difficult are you currently finding it to meet your effluent regulations? Because if you're already finding it difficult, then you're more at risk. So developing a climate resiliency plan, first you have to understand what challenges you're going to face, and then understanding the associated risk, and then you can identify adaptation actions and develop a plan. So we're going to move forward into some EPA resources that are available, and there's a lot of really cool tools out there to help you do these things. The first one we're going to talk about is creating resilient water utilities, or the CRWU initiative. So this is a really awesome and unique resource. They provide a lot of tools, training, and technical assistance to help you increase your climate resiliency. And we're going to go through each of them, but it is a really unique tool, and it kind of covers all of the steps you need to develop and implement a climate resiliency plan, from helping you identify your risk or your challenges you're going to face, all the way to linking you up with funding sources you might be able to apply for. So we're first going to talk about their resilient strategies guide. So this is kind of their first step in the process. You can do it really quickly. I did kind of a fake one over here with a screenshot of, but it takes like 10 minutes. So actually, maybe a little more if you're actually doing it for a real utility, but introduces utilities to the adaptation planning process. It's built based on the experiences of other utilities, and it has a lot of really good information in it. So it's going to help you identify your planning priorities, your vulnerable assets, your potential adaptation strategies, and it's also going to give you a list of available funding sources. So I did it, I selected California, wastewater, and a small system, and then I went through and selected some priorities, which were mainly, it gave me ones that were very California specific, such as wildfire, drought. I selected a few of those. Assets, I just went through and selected some general wastewater treatment system assets, and then it'll suggest strategies you can take, and it has associated costs with those strategies from like $1 to $3 signs. So you can select some strategies that you'd be interested in to combat your risks. And then it also, the final step is it links you up with funding sources that you qualify for. And these are both national as well as regional and state specific funding sources. So this is a really good place to get started if you are just want to scratch the surface. And the output of this actually can be used to get into their more robust tool. So they have a climate resilience evaluation and awareness tool, or CREAT. So CREAT assists the water sector utilities in assessing climate-related risks to utility assets and operations. So it has these 5 modules on the right over here that helps users consider their climate impacts and identify adaptation options. So the first one is just the climate awareness model. So basically, you're going to input some basic utility information, and it'll, based on your location, it'll kind of build out a climate profile for you and identify what risks you're going to be facing. And then in the second module, the scenario development one, it takes the data it got from the first module and it kind of defines the threat scenarios based on available climate data at your location. And then in the third one, you can actually input your system's asset inventory, and you can review kind of the economic value based on your utility location. And that kind of just helps you compare the costs of your, it helps you define critical assets and provide the value to your system. The fourth module, adaptation planning. So this is where you identify what kind of steps you can take to help you mitigate your risk moving forward. And then the fifth one is your risk assessment. So it kind of looks at your assets, looks at your consequences, and then kind of weighs the costs of your adaptation plans against the cost of consequences of your assets failing. So the inputs for this is just basic utility information, asset inventory, and they actually, if you want to look at a specific asset and threat combination, so if you're just interested in one of your assets, then you can actually, they outline how to do a streamline analysis in their user guide, but it's basically you just only select that asset and then move forward. But that's all in their user guide that you can find on their website. And then the outputs of this are going to be, they have a report associated with each module. And the reports all kind of lead into the final ones. The climate awareness report, which is going to summarize your future climate conditions and impacts. Your scenario development report, which lists each scenario and the associated threats. Your consequences and assets report. And this is going to give you a matrix of economic consequences and your assets. And it's really going to help you determine what the associated or like how the severity of the risks. And then your adaptation planning report, which is just going to be your an adaptation plan with a cost for each of your adaptive measures. And then the plan report, which is kind of a culmination of all these and includes a risk assessment for each specific adaptation plan and can help you weigh them against each other. And this is really useful if you are trying to prioritize infrastructure improvements and need to get stakeholder support. So all this information can be really useful for that. So some of the goals of the CREATS analysis is just to increase operator awareness of potential climate change impacts, to determine the threshold levels of asset failures and kind of help you prioritize which assets you need to be able to improve or invest in sooner, quantify potential consequences from climate related or other threats, inform adaptation decision and making decision based on identified threats, and then examine the cost adaptation options in comparison to costs associated with the consequences of climate change threats. So again, just really helping you with your decision-making process, deciding what to prioritize, and helping you have information to give to stakeholders to really defend why your needs need to be a priority. And then again, if you want help with any of these, they have this really cool resource called the Training Center. So they actually have region-specific training modules that go over how to use the CRWU tools. They also have additional information on climate, as well as financing options. So this is a really good place if you are kind of a little overwhelmed with the CREAT tool, and these modules will help you know how to use it well. And then another resource they have is climate data maps. So they just have a lot of very interactive maps that will help you assess your utilities risk for a lot of different climate change scenarios, flooding, hurricanes, stream flow predictions, wildfire conditions, snowpack change. And then they also have interactive case study maps. So you can go check this out. So it has case studies for how other water systems adapted to climate change. And you can see over here, you can look specifically for wastewater, drinking water, combined stormwater. There aren't as many wastewater ones now, but they're updating this as they go. So, and then another resource we're going to talk about today is the US Climate Resiliency Toolkit. So this one isn't specific to water, but they have a lot of great water resources on there, and most of their sections you can actually sort to only find water related content or resources. So they have additional resources for risk assessment, climate data, training, and technical assistance. One thing they have that is just like a super quick kind of walk-through framework to help you document climate hazards and kind of just come up with solutions is their steps to resilience. So it's just 5 super short modules. They're a couple minutes long. They walk through the following steps: or understanding your exposure, assess vulnerability and risk, investigate options, prioritize and plan, and take action. So it's kind of similar to the resiliency guide from the CRWU, but it's a little bit less in depth. And then they also have a interactive case study map. So this you can actually filter by your specific climate threat. Your topics, in this case, it would be water, because the rest are just different types of businesses and infrastructure. And then your region, and also like specific steps to resilience. So specific actions if you want to look into like how a facility upgraded their biological treatment or something. And then they have the climate resiliency toolkit. So for this, you can also filter it, so you can just have the water related tools, but it's a lot of, again, interactive maps, data, and you can again filter it by climate threat, topic, region, steps to resilience. So just a lot of good resources. I think these are pretty supplementary to the CRWU that is a little bit more all-encompassing, but if there's something that you identify and you want to get more in depth after using that, I think the US Climate Resiliency Toolkit has a lot of avenues to kind of get more in depth into one aspect of your climate risk. And then another cool thing, technical and educational resources. So 2 of these I'd really like to highlight is the Find Experts and the training courses. So the Find Experts is going to help you locate both climate science service centers and then also like individual consultants and experts in your area that could be of use to you. And then the training courses. So the training courses they're all free. They're a combination of kind of online videos to like walk through classes where you kind of click through, and they all have an associated test with them. So it's a good thing for workforce development. There's a lot of like operator training options on here and similar things. So those 2 I think are really helpful. I just wanted to highlight those. All right, so moving forward, implementing a resiliency or climate resiliency plan. I think I have 2 poll questions here.
Yeah, I have 2 more, so I'll go
Okay.
ahead and launch the first one. So has your system ever seriously considered any of the following? Select all that apply. The options are applying for a state loan or grant, pooling financial or management resources with other systems, physically consolidating with another large system, or integrating OWTS into existing system. I'm going to close the poll in a few seconds, so make sure to submit your answer. It's closing in 3, 2, 1. And so it looks like the top answer was applying for a state loan or grant at 89%. And then,
All right, awesome. Thank you guys.
for our final poll, where does your system typically go first to seek information on managing new challenges? And here we have EFC type networks, other systems, online resources, state or regional boards, or other. Okay, the poll is closing in 3, 2, 1. So it looks like the top answer is state and regional boards at 34%, followed by online resources and other systems.
All right, great. Thank you guys. That's all really helpful information for us. All right, so helping you put your plan into action. So kind of mentioned before when we were talking about the specific impacts to climate change and the different elements, but a lot of helping you build resilience is just going to be able, especially for small systems, is going to be securing funding, getting technical assistance, and developing your workforce. Sorry, my slides are frozen for some reason. Oh, there we go. All right. So finding funding, and again, with the Resilient Strategies Guide from the CRWU, you are going to get the most comprehensive list of funding sources. So I definitely recommend you check that out. And they're going to be state and region specific as well. So I'm actually just going to walk through an overview of some of the national funding resources available to you, but definitely recommend checking that out because it's going to give you the most comprehensive list. So some of the funding sources, a big one is going to be the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. So there's a wide range of eligible projects that will help you improve your resiliency, strengthen and protect your water infrastructure, as well as energy and water efficiency upgrades. So I've linked the website here. If you download the slides, all the links are embedded, so you can just click on it. And that's going to be, the funding type is a low rate loan. And then the Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Authority funding, or WIFIA, it's pretty similar to the Clean State Revolving Fund. If a project is eligible for the CWSRF, it's also going to be eligible for WIFIA funding. So it's a federal credit program administered by the EPA, and will fund eligible water and wastewater infrastructure projects. And like the CWSRF, it's also a low rate loan. A grant option would be the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. They have a Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Fund called the BRIC Fund. So eligible projects are just anything that includes hazard mitigation that's going to reduce risk from disasters and natural hazards. So a lot of infrastructure improvement for wastewater treatment systems will qualify for this. And if you want more information, it's linked. And actually the application period is opening very soon. So definitely check that out if it's something you're interested in. And then for rural systems, there's the National Rural Water Association, or NRWA Rural Water Loan Fund. So it's a federal credit program, so it's going to be a low rate loan. It's administered by the EPA for eligible water and wastewater infrastructure projects. And then the USDA rural development grants. So I couldn't find anything that's currently open, but it's always a good place to check. But I did find something talking about how they're starting a Closing America's Wastewater Access Gap community initiative that's going to be providing funding for small rural wastewater systems. It's currently still in its pilot phase, but it's definitely something to keep on your radar, and more opportunity for funding might open up. All right, technical assistance. So one great place to get technical assistance is the EFCN network. We can help you with a wide variety of resiliency related technical assistance. And here are just kind of all the EFCs across the country. So you can find one that's located near you. And then again, we've linked this a few times, but a request to apply for TA can be filled out on the EFCN website. And then another technical assistance option is going to be the Rural Community Assistance Corporation, or RCAC. This obviously for rural communities. So they offer training, technical assistance, and financial assistance to small, low-income communities in rural areas and tribes. They offer assistance to build, improve, and manage and operate wastewater systems. And again, information linked there. So workforce development. This is a really important part to incorporate into a climate resiliency plan, because it's important to have staff that are, and operators that are able to adapt their process and just adapt to the changes. So a lot of the resources I've already discussed have a lot of opportunities for workforce development. So there's operator training offered through the EFC network. We personally at the EFC at Sacramento State offer operator training assistance, and then training for rural communities through RCAC, which we just discussed. And then again, the bank of free online training materials for operators and managers from the US Climate Resiliency Toolkit is another great resource, especially if you just want to go through some online kind of on your own time training. And then some more other EPA training resources. Always be checking for the water utility workshops and webinars. I linked it here. You can check for any upcoming trainings that are interest of you. The water and wastewater utility all hazards boot camp. So this was a training course designed for water and wastewater employees, but it's all online now. It is kind of a walkthrough module, so I think you do have to download a software to be able to do it, but it's free. And then the community-based water resiliency training. So this is kind of a cool tool. It provides you resources to be able to conduct a water resiliency workshop in your own community, and it really focuses on having kind of a summit within your community and bringing together your drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems along with your community, and really having a discussion about water resiliency. So that's another thing to look into. And with that, I think I'm done, and we'll move on to questions.
Great, thank you so much, Caitlin. We do have some questions in the chat. So the first one is, what is an OWTS?
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's an on-site wastewater treatment system.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we may have to refer to this one after the session, but do you know what kind of resources are available for agencies that want to evaluate consolidation?
Yeah, so if you're considering consolidation, I think you could go through like the EFCN network. I think that's a service that is provided, or just like technical assistance. But I can.
And I think we do have other resources too on our website that could help answer that question as well, in terms of partnership, consolidation, really working with other systems.
Yeah, I know we do consolidations mainly through our state water board in California. So I'm not sure about other states, but I'd assume that there's resources through your state board as well.
So for our next question, an attendee asked, what is considered too great of risk in regards to drought in an area?
Too great a risk in regards to drought. I'm not quite sure of the context, but too great of risk for, I guess it's hard to ask for follow-up in this format. I'm not sure. I think a lot of the tools that we give, they take location-specific data. So if you're concerned about drought associated with your specific region, then they can kind of help you, I guess, assess the severity of that risk. I'm not quite sure what like too much risk of drought in terms of wastewater treatment means though, so I apologize.
Oh, they clarified. They said to
Okay.
get a loan or grant is what they meant about risk.
Oh, I actually do not know the answer to that question. I don't know what would be considered too severe of drought, or if there would be something that would be considered too severe. So I apologize, I do not know.
So this one's a comment and a question, but they asked, oh, I just lost it. Oh yes, here. They said, I have heard that FEMA, oh, sorry, I'm having an issue seeing the whole question. I've heard that FEMA will not fund water infrastructure improvements to increase water flow for firefighting. What is your experience?
Yeah, so I do not know specifically about FEMA. I think if you want to increase water flow for firefighting and kind of improve your water capacity, that is something that, yeah, I don't think FEMA would be the one for that. Maybe a clean water state revolving fund, but I don't know. I actually don't have a lot of personal experience with FEMA. So I wouldn't know, but I don't think for increasing like fire flow capacity, they would be the fund you would go to. But there's
Looks
definitely assistance available for that. And again, I feel like going through the technical assistance through the EFCN, you can find help for that.
Looks like we received some comments in the chat about this. One said, if they are funding disaster recovery, they will only fund recovery or fixing a system to the previous state or level that it was before a disaster. And then someone else said neither FEMA or USDA will assist if it's for that singular purpose. So we appreciate your comments. And it looks like we have one more question. I don't know if you'll know the answer to this one, Caitlin, but they said, how difficult is it to get funding for a system during a transfer from a private to a mutual domestic water system?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would not know the answer to that.
All right, so I think that's all of our questions. And please, if you have any, you can submit them in the chat now, but you can also contact Caitlin after the session or go through me and I can get you in contact with Caitlin at our small systems email. But following this webinar, you will all receive an email with the slides and a link to the recording. You also receive our evaluation, and we ask that you let us know on your thoughts about today's session, and this helps us plan future webinars that are on topics important to you. So thank you so much, Caitlin, for sharing your expertise with us today.
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending.
Yeah, and we hope to see you at a future EFCN event. So thank you so much.